Japan Station is made possible in part by Patreon support, and we just got a new patron who joined the $1 a month tier. Sam, thank you so much. So joining the $1 a month tier gets you early access to Japan Station episodes plus ad-free versions, and it makes it a lot easier for me to keep producing this because I need to pay for bills. So if you want to make sure that I can keep bringing you more content like this, consider joining the Patreon, japankyo.com/Patreon, link down below.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Japan Station.
Welcome to Japan Station, a production of japankyo.com. This is the podcast where we teach you everything you should know about Japan, plus a few other things. I'm your host, content creator, founder of japankyo.com, and lifelong Japan enthusiast, Tony R. Vega. In case you missed the last episode, I just announced that I'm going to be doing another walk across Japan, this time from Iwakuni, that is kind of close to Kyushu on the island of Honshu. So I will be starting in Yamaguchi Prefecture and making my way all the way down to basically the southern point in mainland Japan, Kagoshima. That's around 500 kilometers. Check out the last episode to hear a few more details, but I am looking for sponsors. So if you want to support, you can always join the Patreon. You can also check out ko-fi.com/Japankyo for one-time donations, or you can reach out, mail at japankyo.com if you want to donate a little extra and become a main sponsor. Currently, I'm at $2,600 of my $4,000 goal. If you can support, I would greatly appreciate that. As I've said before, I'm legally blind, and I'm doing this as a way to combine my passion for Japan with my passion for advocacy and raising awareness for the blind and visually impaired. I saw this as the perfect way to put these two things together. I document my entire journey on social media with videos and pictures while I'm doing this, and then I talk about it on the podcast and in videos, and I let you guys know all the troubles and things that I had to overcome, because there's a whole lot of things that I have to overcome when I'm walking through rural Japan with just me, my white cane, and Google Maps. So I'll leave it at that. Let's get into the episode today. So today you're going to get to hear a conversation with Dr. Eric C. Rath. He is a professor at the University of Kansas, and he's also the author of the book Oishii, The History of Sushi. So we're going to be talking about the history of sushi. I absolutely love sushi, and I love digging into Japanese food history. This is a really, really interesting episode. I'm sure you're going to get to hear at least a couple things that you may not have known before about sushi. And then towards the end, we also talk a little bit about sashimi. And then at the very end, we also talk about his upcoming book, which is coming in October of 2025. This one is about the history of sake. It's called Kanpai, The History of Sake. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out for that, because that's coming very soon. But if you want to check out Dr. Rath's book, Oishii, The History of Sushi, check out the link down below. There's an Amazon link there. In case you want to pick it up, it is available for purchase. So that's it from me. Let's get into my conversation with Dr. Eric C. Rath. I love sushi. A lot of people love sushi, but was there a specific, I'm sure you love sushi. I've heard you talk about it. So you wrote an entire book about it, but was there any specific thing? Was there some kind of moment that hey, I should write a book about this? Was there some anecdote, something that really struck you that you thought this is something I really, really want to do?
Just this publisher that I was working with, he asked me, do you know anybody who could write this book on the history of sushi? And I said, well, I'll do it. So that was the impetus for it. But, I've been eating sushi for decades and decades. And I realized we really need a history of sushi. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing else like it in English. Mm-hmm. And just dived into the topic and got to eat a lot of interesting sushi that I would not have eaten otherwise. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you went to many different places in Japan as part of the research. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah. Some of the more out of the way places too. Not just Tokyo, mm-hmm. but trying some of the oldest forms of sushi, the sushi in its fermented form.
Right.
So when we think about sushi today, we think of those rolled sushi, the makizushi, sushi rolls, or else we might think of hand-formed nigiri sushi,
Mhm.
But this sort of sushi that's got a much older history, it's not often made in Japan except in a few locations. And I decided, well, I really have to try that if I'm going to write this book about the history of sushi.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I did, and maybe ate too much of it.
Well, there's one that's infamous that I even knew about, but I've never had it. And it's in Shiga Prefecture, right? Like that's
Right,
kind of like the even in Japan, like sometimes you'll see, they'll do like the variety shows and they'll talk about that stuff.
right.
But could you tell us a little bit about that one specifically?
Sure. Not many people eat that. It's what percentage did I see once? It was like 2% of all Japanese have tried this. This is a funazushi,
Hmm.
and funa refers to a carp. So it's a type of carp. It's very closely resembles a goldfish.
Hmm.
It's about as big as your hand,
Hmm.
and they're native to Lake Biwa. And the fishermen there catch them in March or April, and then they salt them and leave them salted until about August or September. And then they take some of the salt off, but then they pack them with rice and basically allow them to ferment in a closed container for months, sometimes years. And what happens is the sushi undergoes a fermentation process, and that's lactic acid fermentation. It's the same kind of fermentation that happens when you make yogurt. So the sushi gets very sour and actually extremely sour. It's probably the most sour thing you've ever had. The rice also turns into almost like a mush, and a lot of people don't eat the rice. So it's very sour, but also very, very flavorful. And it's just surprising. You can take a fish, an ordinary river fish like or lake fish like carp, and turn it into something that tastes like summer sausage or prosciutto. So it really has a meaty character to it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember you were talking about there was I guess a shop that sold almost like sandwiches, right? I guess they were sandwiches, right? That had the funasu
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah. I mean, one chef really wanted to play with the idea that this has very savory qualities that are
Hmm.
reminiscent of meat. And so what she did at her restaurant, Biwako Daughters, is she made a sandwich using this funazushi, just thin slices of it, and then also paired that with some Havarti cheese and then toasted it on some lovely bread. And wow, it was just like an amazing sandwich you would get in Tuscany. It tasted like sausage. I couldn't believe it.
Oh.
So not many people eat funazushi today, and I think this is a one way that one chef at least is trying to introduce the fish to people. Because traditionally, if you'd have a little bit and it was something you ate with sake, and maybe have it just certain times of year.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's turning something that's like old fashioned and kind of weird, quote unquote, into something fashionable and kind of like, ooh, this is a delicacy kind of thing, right?
sure, you're more apt to try it when it's like a
Yeah.
sandwich, I think. And Japanese are not eating so much rice these days. So if you go to Shiga Prefecture, you're more apt to see wheat fields than you are rice fields in some places.
Mhm.
So it kind of suits the diet of today too.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, obviously Lake Biwa, biggest lake in Japan. Is there a specific area that is known for this more than other areas around Biwa?
It's more the Shiga side.
Hmm.
So the not the I guess actually Shiga goes all the way around Lake Biwa. It's more the east side,
Hmm.
but I think you can catch them anywhere. Those fish.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I've been to Shiga a few times. I have yet to try funazushi, but I should, I guess.
Well, I thought it was going to be a rarity. So when I got there, I walked like a couple miles to buy it.
Yeah.
Um, I should have taken a cab, but I decided I'm going to walk. I'm going to see the countryside, and I did. And I got funazushi, brought it back to my hotel room, stuck it in the fridge because it was a whole fish. I didn't know how I was going to eat it.
Yeah.
But then, I started walking around town in different places, and lo and behold, it's sold to tourists in these little packs, and
Right.
it's already pre-sliced.
Uh-huh.
So it's pretty easy to pick up. And what's interesting is that the female fish sells more than the male fish because the female has this lovely roe, the fish eggs in it, and has nice orange color too. So people like the female funazushi, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess next time I go to Shiga, I'm not sure what that'll be, but
Yeah, well, you should definitely try it once.
yeah,
I think it's one of those things that you know you can say you did,
right.
and you realize, oh, this is the ancient type of sushi. This is the type of sushi that was something similar to this was made in China in the 6th century and made in Japan in the 8th century.
Hmm.
Of course, the recipe's changed a lot since those days, but still, it's a holdover to more ancient types of food.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, you just brought it up, but we all think of sushi as Japanese, and well, modern sushi is, what came from Japan, but the origins do go back to China, right?
Well, I mean, as best we can understand that, the first reference to sushi comes from a Chinese dictionary
Hmm.
in the 3rd century BCE. And sushi, if you look at the character for sushi, it's defined as something that's made from fish and salt.
Hmm.
So what that is, how it was made, it's kind of an open
Right.
question. But that's the first reference to sushi that
Hmm.
that we have in a text.
Hmm.
Then around 3rd century AD or Common Era, uh, there's another character for sushi that comes up,
Hmm.
and that has fish, rice, and salt. So the second character has rice added to it. It's not just fish and salt; it's rice as well.
Hmm.
And it's confusing. People are like, "What's the difference between these two?" And by the 4th century, they're using the terms interchangeably.
Hmm.
But it's not until the 6th century where we have actually a recipe for how to make sushi.
Hmm.
And that recipe is in a Chinese text. And it makes something very similar to the sushi that I was talking about earlier, the funazushi, where you pack everything in a container and leave it aside for months or years. But what's interesting is that, according to that cookbook at least, that sushi was not sort of eaten as is, it was added to soups and things like that. So a
Hmm.
completely different way of eating sushi.
Hmm. Hmm. So
And
I
then
guess
around 8th century, we get
almost like
references.
like miso-ish kind of thing, right? Like you do stuff with it. You don't just flat out eat miso, right?
Right, right. Yeah. So kind of a flavoring.
Yeah.
I would think of it that way. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then you were saying I when I interrupted you.
Oh, yeah, sure. And then by the 8th century, we have references to sushi in Japan
Hmm.
too. And it's probably this lactic acid fermentation sushi.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. I mean, obviously, like fermented foods were back then, no refrigeration, stuff like that. I mean, that makes sense. It wasn't until
Mhm.
much more recent where we got the ability to, like, for example, tuna, right? Stuff like that, where that wasn't really a thing for, I don't know, up until fairly recently, right?
Oh, for sushi, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, because it's just a huge fish
Hmm.
and it's a predatory fish, and it's just hard to manage. So it's not until the post-war that bluefin tuna really takes off as a something in sushi,
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
which is interesting because when we think of the typical sushi fish today, it's bluefin tuna, it's maguro,
Yeah.
that red tuna.
Right, right. Maguro, and then of course when you want to get fancy, like the whole otoro, all the toros, like it's all tuna, right? So, but that
Right,
was
right.
a much more recent thing. But then,
Mhm.
around when do we start to see that transition from this old fermented sushi into something more recognizable to what we know it as today?
Right. That happens sometime in the 17th century, as best we were able to understand it. And I say, as best as we are able to understand it, because that's when the first Japanese recipes date from. So the earliest written Japanese recipes for sushi are really from the 17th century. And what we see is that people are trying to speed up the process of making sushi. They did it too in the medieval period. They would just not wait as long for the sushi to be made. But by the 17th century, Japan is urbanizing and pace of life is maybe a little more hectic, and people just don't want to wait around for 6 months to a year to have their sushi. So how do you get that sour taste? If you're not relying upon lactic acid fermentation, well, you use something else. You can use sake. You can use koji, which is a precursor for sake making and used in all kinds of things. It's a mold. Or you can use vinegar. And that's what people finally hit upon. So we'll mix vinegar with the rice, and then we'll get some sour taste that way, and maybe some preservative value too from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, nowadays I think the common explanation is, oh, sushi, vinegar, and rice, right? Like that's what the word is. But I guess that was like an example of like after the fact, we're going to slap that kanji on like as a modification more recently.
Oh yeah, sure. So it's kind of hard to talk about kanji on the radio, but
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of that notion that sushi is having something to do with vinegar,
Yeah.
is more recent than the older types of sushi. And this idea of like, what does sushi mean, was something that puzzled people in the 18th century. And they went back to ancient texts, and they felt that sushi came from the word for something sour. So sushi is something sour tasting, literally. And of course, those ancient types of sushi, that's that lactic acid, yogurt fermented sushi, in contrast to the more recent types of sushi.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I say yogurt fermented, I mean, the same fermentation process as the way yogurt is made.
Right.
Right.
So basically, yeah, we're talking 17. So we enter the Edo period. And I think this is for a lot of people like, oh, sushi and Edo are kind of, synonymous in a sense, like it's you closely associate those two. Is it correct that it was largely like a kind of food stall kind of food, right? It wasn't like you would go inside a restaurant. Was it primarily like these yatai, these food stalls where you would eat sushi?
Yeah. The type of sushi that we're talking about, the Edo type of sushi, there's two of them. There's the sushi rolls, the makizushi, and there's the hand-formed nigiri zushi. And makizushi dates to like the late 18th century, and nigiri zushi is from the early 19th century, as best as we're able to understand it. And totally, these are street foods. These are something that you would pick up as a snack and eat standing. So it's kind of hard to imagine, going to a sushi restaurant and standing today, but that's the normative way of eating sushi. Even into the 20th century, people would stand and eat. The only person who would be sitting down would be the chef.
Interesting.
Because the chef had to cook, and cooking was always like, and cutting especially, was something that was performed in a kneeling position.
Ah, okay.
So you would get these sushi, and the nigiri sushi too were huge compared to what we are used to today. We're often given these like little, almost like a niblet. It's not even a proper sushi in some places. And I'm talking about nigiri sushi here. But back in the Edo period, and even in the early 20th century, these were about the size of hot dogs, the nigiri sushi. So it's a substantial snack that you could have.
Yeah. This is something I probably heard this in some Japanese TV show. I don't remember exactly where, but like you would be able to tell how good sushi was at a particular stall because you would see that the noren, so there's like half curtains, they would be dirtier with more like rice on it, because people after eating the sushi, they would leave and then wipe their hands on the noren, on the like half curtains. Like, I don't know if that's like an actual thing, but I remember hearing that somewhere. Have you heard that?
No, it's kind of gross though.
It is.
I if I saw that, I would think, oh, what an unsanitary place. I would not want to go into that or want to buy from that person.
I don't know if that's true, but I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that. That's an interesting story. But Japanese food is full of stories, and that's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by it, is all these little stories, these food stories that people tell about food.
Definitely, yeah. And to be clear, there's a lot of stories that sound nice, but they're not true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So okay, so we have these big hot dog sized like nigiri sushi.
Right.
This is a thing in Edo. Where do we go from there? Like, well, how about this then? Like, what if maguro? That obviously salmon wasn't much more until much more recent. That's got its own
Mhm.
interesting story too. But
Right.
like, what was being eaten back then, and then how does it change into like the more modern form that we know now?
Right. Well, back in the Edo period, you have to think about this is a time without any refrigeration.
Hmm.
There's no ice available too.
Hmm.
So people have to use smaller fish.
Hmm.
And they're going to be using the fish that are available locally. Unfortunately, if you're from Edo, you have Tokyo Bay, you have Edo Bay right on your doorstep.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the fish comes from there. Um, that's where we get this concept of Edo Bai, from or before Edo, literally, meaning something local to Edo. And that concept developed first with unagi, eel, and then spread to sushi and other foods. So the foods that would be used in sushi would be the fish would be coming from Edo Bay or very close,
Hmm.
smaller fish, and it's not raw either. The sushi chefs, at least as best as we're able to understand it, would boil certain foods. They would maybe pickle some of them in vinegar. They just weren't serving raw fish to people because it would just go bad.
Hmm.
So when I read that, I thought that was very interesting because oftentimes we associate sushi with raw fish, but
Yeah.
back when onigiri sushi was or nigiri sushi was taking off,
Mhm.
it wasn't raw at all.
Mm-hmm. Right, right, right. Like it, for example, like going back to the salmon thing, right? Like that wasn't one of the reasons why it wasn't something more consumed was because of parasite concerns, right? It wasn't until like you could freeze it really quickly and eliminate that concern that, it resulted in some of these fish, perhaps salmon wasn't the only one, but becoming more common, right?
Right, right. And the story about that is that the Norwegians really pushed smoked salmon for sushi,
Mm.
and that took off in Japan, and that's now like one of the most popular types of sushi in some parts of East Asia, like Hong Kong. Uh, Smoked salmon sushi,
Mm-hmm. Right,
but
right.
that's like you said, it's very recent.
Mm-hmm. Um, okay, so we have the Edo period. There's some preparation, some pickling, some boiling, perhaps going on. We have got these big, nigiri sushi. Once we enter into let's say like Meiji, Taisho, Showa periods, the 1900s, like does it start to change, or like at what point does it start to evolve from there?
Well, right. So in the Edo period, there are some upscale sushi restaurants where you would presumably sit down and eat, although we don't know too much about them. But most of the people are eating standing on the street,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Uh, by the 20th century, you have now sit down, we have actual restaurants. Some of them are standing restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer just food stands. Others are sit down places. And then sushi starts to spread to the rest of society. People might get carry out. It's available at department store cafeterias and the like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big change because your sushi restaurant was kind of a dive.
Mm-hmm.
It was a place where men would go,
Mm-hmm.
a very masculine space. So when sushi in the 1920s starts entering into department stores, that means women, that means families can have this professionally made sushi. Now, of course, they might have been making it themselves at home, but that is a change. Sushi becomes a little more democratic in the Taisho period, if you will. But what's really strikes me is that a lot of people in Japan don't know what sushi is, even in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
There was a survey in 1941 that a number of folklorists did, and they traveled. They were in different parts of the country,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a questionnaire that they asked people. And one of the questions was, do you eat sushi? What kind of sushi do you eat? And some of the responses are just wild because people are saying, sushi, what's sushi? Or they would say, oh, I think my uncle had sushi once. And so it's such a rarity, and it boggles the mind today because we so closely associate sushi with Japanese food. But even in the 1940s, people didn't know what the heck sushi was in some parts of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about it, unless you lived on the coast, if you were a couple of miles inland, in some places you never got fresh seafood until the post-war period. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that sushi's history and its popularization is very, very recent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, I mean, you could say, in a sense, even though it does have that tie back to China, like it very much developed as these like regional cuisines, right? Like we're talking about like the Shiga thing with the funazushi, but then we're talking about, the Edo sushi that became the kind of more prominent version. So it's like it's popping up in these little places that are by the water, right?
Right. And that Edo style of sushi really doesn't spread until after World War II, when Tokyo is bombed and a lot of the sushi chefs have to go relocate. And so they spread that style of sushi making throughout Japan.
Okay. That's very interesting. All right. So, that is another kind of unexpected twist in the story that forces people to go to other places. So, I mean, it really, the modern version of sushi starts to come into shape post-war, right? Is that fair to say?
Sure. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we
get certain set serving servings of sushi,
kind of like the tropes of sushi start to be created of modern sushi in that time period. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think most people have no idea about that, and I think it's such an interesting thing related to an unexpected part of Japanese history.
Right. Well, I mean, if you go to have sushi today, if you sit at the counter and you order, let's say, maguro, or you order an omelet, you get two slices of it. You always get two pieces. That's typical. It's not just one. You kind of like, why two? Well, the story about that is that comes from the post-war period, when there weren't that many ingredients right after the Second World War. Actually, a lot of restaurants weren't even open then. And sushi chefs, rather than have a wider variety of things, they would serve two of one item, and that way they could, make do with less variety of sushi. And so that's a post-war development that doesn't seem to have gone away at all. And of course, that's also the time when sushi shrinks in size, and it's also the time when you get these 10-piece sets of sushi. And the way those came about is that a lot of people didn't have money after the Second World War. So sushi chefs, they wanted cash, but they also needed ingredients. And so they actually asked General MacArthur, who's running the country, if they could do a barter system whereby customers could bring a certain amount of rice or a certain amount of other ingredients, and that would be bartered for a serving of sushi. And so you get like your 10 pieces of sushi if you brought a certain amount of rice or a certain amount of vegetables. And that sort of serving size of like 10 pieces or 8 pieces became standard after that, even when we've long forgotten about bartering for sushi.
Right. And especially in the US, you get that on a nice wooden boat sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Then there's a whole other aspect of the story. Like sushi goes to the US and turns into its own unique thing.
Well, sure. I mean, I think also though that sushi is it's always been about performance. When you're selling something on the street, you want to attract customers. And how do you do that? You have some kind of shtick, some kind of spiel, some kind of display. And that's very much the case of sitting at a sushi bar. It's watching the chef. It's very performative. It's participatory in some ways. because you can engage with the chef and talk with them and ask questions and hear recommendations and things like that. So this very theatrical part of sushi as part of its history.
Yeah, and like for example, like the omakase kind of thing where you go, it's like
Mhm.
just feed me, like just whatever you think, whatever's on the menu, just give it to me. Like it's not like a typical restaurant where you go and you look at the menu and you go like, okay, I'm gonna get the tonkatsu and make it a
Mhm.
extra big. No, it's like, all right, I trust you. You're an expert, right? These are seen
Right.
as like almost, well, yeah, craftspeople in a sense, right? Like shokunin, right? Whereas like,
Right.
I trust you, lead me, and I want to have a good experience. I know you're going to give that to me, right?
Right. And then if you do that omakase, you know how much you're going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about having the knowledge about what to order.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably the things are going to be fresh. Presumably that they'll be somewhat artistic,
Mm-hmm.
and because you're leaving it to the chef, and the chef is going to show off their skill.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why omakase is so popular. I think mostly in America because you don't have to worry about ordering. You don't
Yeah.
have to remember the names of the fish and know which in season, et cetera, et cetera. You can just say, I leave it to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Um, is there like, because the thing that sushi's had this interesting trajectory, especially post-war. We go from this, like we are talking about, food stall, very manly guys, eating with their hands typically, like just shoving it into their mouth, this big hot dog size thing, and then we go into more modern times where it's kind of it becomes this luxury food, especially like outside of Japan. This kind of high class, nice restaurants, but also it's available at the supermarket. And then in Japan, we've got the whole conveyor belt side of things. And of course it's available at the supermarket. So it kind of, it goes both ways. But um, what can you tell us about kind of that trajectory, like post-war, that we have the barter system and all that, things start to come into, post-war, right?
Right,
People are kind
right.
of living a more regular life. Like, how does sushi go? Like, where does it evolve from there? What's that trajectory like?
Yeah, you really see two trends in the post-war. One is the sort of popularization of sushi and making it affordable. And that's something that is epitomized by the conveyor belt sushi
Mm-hmm.
that develops in Osaka in the 1950s. And
Oh, real that early?
originally,
Yeah, I didn't know it was that early.
yeah, and originally, that was a standing restaurant too.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner had, well, depending on the story, he either had gone to a meat processing plant or he went to a beer brewery and saw the conveyor belts and thought, aha, I'm going to serve people sushi that way.
Mm-hmm.
And tried it out on his customers. It took a while for him to finesse this mode of service, but it really took off and really gained prominence in the 1970s when more and more people are starting to dine out.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the popularization of dining out in Japan is from the 1970s. It's not just men anymore who are eating. It's young women, it's families and the like. So there's that democratic, less expensive type of sushi that's available, but then more of higher end sushi
Mm-hmm.
also becomes more prominent in this period. And that's high end restaurants. I mean, Japan almost invented those places. Some place where you can have a great dining experience, and you're gonna be paying. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think perhaps the epitome of kind of high class sushi relevance in pop culture Japan perhaps is like the 1980s bubble economy, where you get this slang of the Japanese entertainers saying like, we're going to go to Zagin to get some shisu, right? Where you were like reversing the words, you were making these anagrams of words, and one of the like symbolic things of this was like, we're going to go to Ginza, Zagin, to get some shisu because it's a fancy schmancy restaurant. We're going to go spend some good money because it's the bubble economy. We got a bunch of money, right? So that's like classic bubble era slang that it's funny, like, oh, yeah. Sushi was there, right?
And that's also the time that sushi's taking off in the United States too, the 1980s.
Right.
Entering popular culture. It's becoming a yuppie food. It's something, it's seen as healthy. It's seen as elegant. It's seen as mysterious because people who are introducing it to American consumers are always playing up the exoticism of sushi.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
we think of that wonderful scene from The Breakfast Club when Molly Ringwald's eating sushi, and the other students her age need a definition of what it is that she's trying.
Hmm.
So it hits in America, kind of at a perfect time for that, for our own type of conspicuous consumption, and our own fascination with Japan was peaking around that time too in the 1980s.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Of course, there's Nintendo and all that stuff, like the Sony and the Walkman, all that stuff was, flooding the US at that time too. So it's a
Oh
perfect
yeah,
time. Yeah. Um, I, I do want to talk a little bit about your upcoming book, the sake one, but I do have another question just related. Is there,
sure.
s- s- uh, as for sashimi, like what was there anything interesting that you uncovered related to that? I can only assume that sashimi was very much like a fisherman kind of thing, but then it wasn't until more recent that people just started eating like, the raw fish and all that kind of stuff. Like, what can you tell us just, I don't know, a little bit about that side of things?
Yeah, I think there is that sort of fisherman tradition,
Mhm.
but also sashimi was really high cuisine.
Hmm.
If you're a samurai, a high-ranking samurai, if you're a warlord in the medieval period, or you're going to be serving something for the emperor or members of the aristocracy, you're going to be serving them multi trays of food all at once,
Hmm.
which is kind of mind-boggling when we think of high-end Japanese cuisine today. You get one dish at a time, and it's very small and almost not enough food for some people.
Yeah.
But in the medieval period, you get three, five, seven, or more trays of food served just to one person.
Wow.
But on that on the central tray, the one that's put right in front of the guest, where the rice is and where the condiments are, always there's going to be a dish called a namasu, which is kind of a raw salad. Su here is the vinegar su, and nama means raw. And what that is it's fish, varieties of fish sliced up, usually the vinegar dressing, and then maybe some fruit in there. Could be chestnuts in there. Could be all kinds of other stuff. Well, take that and you simplify it, and this happens in the 15th century, then you get sashimi.
Mm-hmm.
And sashimi back then also is being eaten with vinegar. It's not until 19th century where soy sauce becomes the typical condiment for sashimi.
Mm-hmm.
So sashimi is kind of a very elite dish. You couldn't have a banquet without having either namasu or sashimi. And namasu is a very ancient dish. It goes back to the Heian period when people are making it with raw deer meat and things like that.
Wow. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it kind of shows off that you can, bring in the raw fish and all that. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
like not your average person couldn't do that back in those times, right?
Absolutely. So it's a sign of conspicuous consumption. It's a delicacy. You want to put it on the main tray to make sure people will see it because it's something really special.
Mm-hmm.
All the other trays might have other dishes, but they're not as maybe, well, depending on the banquet, each tray would have a soup on it and other side dishes, but certainly the namasu is a highlight.
Right, right, right. So as for the book is out now, and like, are there like recipes too? Like, is that something that people would be able to learn about?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There are two types of recipes in there. There is historical recipes that I translated,
Okay.
and the book was published in 2021, by the way.
Mhm.
And there's also ones that I wanted to show people that sushi, it's not something to be intimidated by. It's
Mhm.
something that you can do yourself.
Mhm.
So a lot of the recipes were ones that my wife and I make in Kansas.
Mm.
And if we can make sushi in Kansas, then pretty much you can do it yourself wherever you are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we have, for example, a scattered sushi, a chirashi sushi.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, a lot of times
Yeah.
at home, like people, even if they don't make like the nigiri sushi, they'll definitely make the chirashi sushi. Yeah.
Yeah. And we did it with smoked salmon and, of course, rice, vinegar,
Mhm.
but also things from the garden, things that are growing wild, some wildflowers. We have these bamboo shoots that come up early in the spring that can be pickled, and we threw those in. So the idea was just to really empower people and to say, if you're going to have sushi, or don't think that sushi is so elite that you don't want to try making it yourself. That was the message I wanted to convey.
Yeah.
Because sushi is a global food these days. We do associate it with Japan, but it's really a global cuisine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So the book is available to purchase. I just looked on Amazon. It's there if you want to check it out. There'll be a link down below.
Right.
So people check it out. There's a lot more there. But as I mentioned, you are working. I think it's coming very soon, right? This new book about sake. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So the same publisher that did my book on sushi, Oishi, The History of Sushi, it's Reaction Books. And Reaction Books is going to publish in October my book, Kanpai, The History of Sake. And so, yeah, I've been working on that for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun to research it.
I wonder, was there any overlap in the sense that both have something to do with fermentation?
Well, absolutely. Some sushi, the funazushi we talked about earlier, sometimes koji, that mold, is used in it, and that makes it even more savory. Koji is an amazing thing. It's really catching on outside of Japan. It's a mold that's crucial for sake making, but it's also used in making soy sauce and all sorts of other things in Japan. And so there's a lot of koji overlap there. And of course, sushi and sake go well together. And also there was a sense of absence too, because it was amazing. Just in the same way that no one has written in English about the history of sushi, no one had, to my knowledge, written about the history of sake. And sake is Japan's, national traditional beverage, alcoholic beverage. And just last year, it gained UNESCO heritage status as an intangible cultural property. So, and then it's catching on too in the United States. There's, and globally, there's more and more sake breweries that are opening up in American cities. Brooklyn has 3 of them already. So,
wow. Yeah. Like I've noticed in the past, I would say maybe 10, 15 years, there's been very much an uptick in not just sake, but any alcohol from Japan, right? Of course, there's the whole big whiskey boom that has happened, but, like the shochu, just any alcohol from Japan, really, like it used to be quite a niche thing, but now, I see it come up in podcasts and YouTube and people talking about it and these sometimes selling for very high prices and all that. So there's really been a surge in interest in the past decade and a half or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And hopefully it'll only just increase because the industry in Japan really needs it for sake. That's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. So that is coming October 2025, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, always happy to talk more about food history with someone like yourself. So maybe we can do another part 2 here. Sure. But as for Oishi, the history of sushi, link is down below. So check that out for anybody that wants to know even more about sushi. But thank you so much for making time, Dr. Rath, and telling us all about your research. It was wonderful to learn about it.
Oh, I'm happy to do that, Tony. I enjoyed our conversation. Thanks.